Alright, how's it going, everybody? We are here for the Virtual World Sports Car Championship 1991 for the 230 kilometers of Monza. It works out to about 41 laps when you include the pace lap. So it's not the longest race, but it is an entertaining race nonetheless. So we're here in qualifying. Purist, the pros, and the AMs are all out in force. And just taking a look at Ross Smith, it's a very, very busy track. As you can see, 31 odd cars. Timing screen is of course down, and it's so helpful during qualifying, but we'll make do without it. 31 cars, and a pretty good split amongst pros, purists, and the AMs. So on board with Ross Smith, looks like he's tailing in behind Tom Mountjoy. And the Nookie Monsters Peugeots are definitely going to be the force to be reckoned with if the Tuesday series is anything to go on. They have fantastic pace in the car, despite having very low fuel usage. So Ross having to contend a little bit with the traffic there, so that will impede his run. And yes, you can kind of see the puddles off to the side. It was raining during the early parts of warm-up, and then the rain slowly subsided. So now we're pretty much on slick tires with just some water off to the side. However, looking at the, hey, the timing's back. That's fantastic. Thank you. I just said thank you to technology. Despite that, we are going to have some, and the timing's dead again, some rain potentially at the very end of the race, which could make things extremely interesting, as the guys are going to run for, you know, over an hour on slick tires and potentially have some rain in the last 10, 20, maybe 30 minutes. So it's going to be very interesting. I had the weather forecast up for Monza. Of course, we use the real-time weather. So it's going to be very interesting indeed if the rain comes back to play a factor as it did in warm-up. Of course, here in qualifying, though, it looks like despite having an extremely busy track, as I believe Jerry Chen there parked off to the side, camera front, qualifying should not be impeded by rain. The beginning of the race shouldn't be impeded by rain. So we'll see how we go. Ross Smith is going to take it into P3 to kick off his endeavor. Of course, he's had to contend with traffic the entire time we've been with him. Walter de Bruin is going to be the pace setter, and he's going to immediately bail and get back out on track. But he sets the pace with a 32.2. 6/10 over Stoll, 9/10 over Smith, who we were with. Who we haven't seen set a time yet is Mr. Ben Borman. Let's pick him up here. He's just starting a lap, but he's going to have to contend with a Lucky Strike Mazda in front of him. It's not going to be the nicest beginning to the lap. He will go to the inside of the Curva Grande. That'll solve that problem. So Sector 1 potentially a little bit impeded. But if we go on board with Mr. Borman... Oops. I'm hitting all the wrong buttons. So what I'd be looking to see is if he can get a purple Sector 2 or 3, being unimpeded through those sectors. De Bruyn's time of a 32.3. The slight improvement. Stoll and Smith are on secondary flyers now. And this is going to be Ben Borman's first flying lap. Can't compare sector times because timing is down, as aforementioned. But that's alright. I'm not sure what in the world happened there to Ben Borman. It looked like a bit of a lag spike, and then he just drove straight on. And then the camera switches right over to Tom Lane, who has to contend with a Mazda spinning out in the wet, who then spins out on his own in the wet. But what in the world happened to Ben Borman, and is he even still in the server? I think he just disconnected in quite violent fashion in the middle of his flying lap. However, in that Shabazel, Sovic goes P3, 7/10 off the lead. However, that is the top of the Purist, and Jason Whitehead is going to take the overall lead in qualifying. Ross Smith jumps it up to P3. I'm jumping to these guys right after they finish their lap, so of course they're back in the pits. As Walter De Bruin will then take it back from Jason Whitehead, 1.4 seconds clear, breaking into the 130s. That might be on par with some of the fastest laps the server has ever seen. In fact, the fastest lap the server has ever seen was by Walter De Bruin at a 130.2. He's matched that where it all counts, close to matching it, let's say, with a 130.7. And he is the only one in the server's history to get into the 130s. So De Bruin absolutely flying and will definitely be the one to challenge the likes of Whitehead, Smith, and Borman as he goes purple sector 1 again. Negotiates that high curve pretty well. You just want to just skim it, just kiss it, because if you get anything extra, if you take anything more out of it, it sort of leads to disaster. The curves are very, very high here, modeled after how they were in 1991 for this particular thing, and we have the old double chicane first sector kind of situation as well, which makes it very interesting. It ironically didn't take too long to get used to. And De Bruin will pip his own time by 0.2 of a second, all in Sector 1 pretty much. Sector 2 and 3 were essentially even, as if very aggressive into the first chicane, and will take it into the gravel. But a fantastic result, and I really don't see anyone being able to match that, just based on sector times even. Everybody is greens and yellows, sometimes by several tenths of a second per sector, compared to what De Bruin has just pulled out there. Jason Whitehead is going to begin his next run. Timing was back for a split second, and I got really excited. And then timing died. So I think there's going to be no timing. I think that decision's been made. So, as we stand, Walter De Bruin, of course, top overall and top in pro with that 130.5. Manuel Stoll has gotten in there at some point with a 131.7 to be top of the Purist. And then Tom Lane just kicks it into third overall. Of course, first in the AMs, Tom Lane with a 131.8. That is a seriously impressive time from Tom Lane in the AM category. Currently ahead of this man, Jason Whitehead. Fourth overall, second in pro. Smith just behind him, over 0.7. To be second in the Purists. So Whitehead's not hitting personal bests either, so this might not be an improvement from Whitehead, and I'll have to settle for fourth overall for the moment. Yeah, and he will have to do so. Let's check in with George Angelidis. Got a personal best first sector. The target time being a 130.5 is a little unfair to everybody else. De Bruin's time has just absolutely stomped the field. I mean, that is a ridiculous time for Walter De Bruin in his Porsche. As Paul Venter will hit P6. This makes him third in the pros, ahead of Ahmed Abdallah, just by a sliver. George Angelidis not personal best in Sector 2. might be picking up a little bit of a draft. No, he's a little bit too far behind the Nookie Monsters there, which will be faster in the straight anyway. But Angelides does improve. However, it's still a few tenths off of P8. Sovic. Oh, and he clips the curb in spectacular fashion. That's the problem if you get onto the opposite end of the curb. It doesn't like you. The curb doesn't like you at all, and it won't let you back over. Absolutely need to stay on the slanted part of the curb and no extra, because the collision, you know, on the opposite side of the curb is violent. Walter de Bruin has gone purple sectors 1 and 2. Looked like, was he maybe backing off there a little bit, or no? Yeah, he was. He did back off there. He was purple sector 1 and 2, and he had to back off. I think Tom Lane was just in front of him, enough to impede what would have been that final sector, so he won't improve on that lap, and it's a very busy track around him for any hope of improving on this lap. Not that he really maybe needs to improve, but he's still going for it. According to his practice time, he still has 4 tenths, but this is going to be difficult with, you know, the slipping and sliding getting slightly offline and the traffic impeding that as well. So De Bruin most likely won't see that purple sector this time by for sector 1, but now I need to hang with him because timing won't tell me off to the side as Ben Borman gets back in the server, gets a lap in, and goes P2 immediately, 7 tenths off of Walter de Bruin's time, who does go purple sector 1 just to show me up. Ben Borman back in action, getting the Nookie Monsters back into the top 3 in qualifying. Goes purple sector 1 again, 3 tenths up. So Borman at this delta point is only 4 tenths beyond De Bruin's pole time. So let's see what he can do in sector 2. Leaving it just to the last 8 minutes or so, Borman, to get back in the server after that pretty spectacular disconnect that hopefully didn't take anybody else out, because it sort of lagged out and then he was going into the Curva Grande. So he's a 10th up and he's off at the exit of Ascari. He did set a personal best in sector 2. Obviously 3 tenths up on De Bruin's time in sector 1. But a spin at the exit to Ascari is going to mean, yeah, that's not going to happen this time by for Ben Borman. However, P2 might be somewhat secure, as Timon Sovic and Manuel Stoll are the ones who would be able to take it from him, and they are both in the lane, potentially for the rest of the session. There's not a lot of time left. Speaking of lane, Tom Lane continues to be P5 overall in what I would assume is that has to be a new livery. I don't remember seeing that livery out there. So Lane on an outlap, meaning he wants to get around that timing and scoring line and get onto another attempt, despite already being 5th. You got to go all the way back to 11th, Adrian Rice, to find the second 91 AM car. Take a look at Ahmed Abdallah. Just jumped it up to 4th on some personal bests. Tried to use an intermittent timing screen to let me know at least something that was going on with sector times, and it appears to have lied to me and then crashed again. I just need to, we're just switching tabs. It's just not a thing. It's not going to happen. That's fine. This is where live timing is the most helpful, because you can find people on flying laps and hot laps. It's super unhelpful where it's 30 seconds behind and then disconnects anyway. However, Abdallah does hit a personal best in sector 1. 4/10 off, the target time of De Bruyn, who goes into the 29.8. De Bruyn is on like world record setting pace, getting into the 29s. Is absolutely ridiculous pace from Walter De Bruyn. Ahmed Abdallah needs to contend with the Lucky Strike Mazda AM car. He did set a personal best in Sector 2. That Parabolica will not have been his most exciting, but he will still go P2 overall ahead of Ben Borman. So that's pole of the AM category. They might just need to let De Bruyn have his own race ahead at this point with the speed that De Bruyn has been able to show. But Ahmed Abdallah goes second, a 10th up on Ben Borman, who was 3/10 up on his own time a little bit ago before chucking it at the end of Ascari. He's got a personal best Sector 1 right now, less than a 10th off of De Bruyn's Sector 1 time, which is a fantastic Sector 1 for him and definitely a big improvement over his own Sector 1 time. So here we go. A little bit of a crutch here through Ascari. Keeps it all together. Personal best Sector 2. He's only a 10th behind Ahmed Abdallah. So it's not purple this time around, but this should be, with a tidy end to the lap, should be enough to get around Ahmed Abdallah's Sauber Mercedes. We'll cross the line now, and it is a 1:30.8. Gets into the 30s, only the second driver to get into the 30s. 7/10 ahead of Abdallah, still 6/10 behind De Bruyn. But with an impeded qualifying session as he had with that disconnect, he'll be happy with that to get onto the pole of the Purist category. Now, as we stand, we have De Bruyn, Borman, Abdallah, Timon Sovic coming in to take over the Kowalski Motorsports team. So I believe this is his first race in this series and already 4th overall. As Ben Borman does go purple Sector 1, so we'll stay with him here. Manuel Stoll, of course, in 5th, as we talked about. Tom Lane, a fantastic performance, being in 6th. And Jason Whitehead sort of dropped down the order there halfway through qualifying and couldn't recover, as I believe Ben Borman's had another disconnect as he's just gone straight on in Ascari. And he's dropped from the server. Oh, Ben Borman just can't get any luck in this series. He had a good Daytona, a horrible Sebring, a fantastic Suzuka battling Whitehead to the line. And it looks like Monza is going to be back in the opposing column of luck for Ben Borman. Walter De Bruyn handily takes pole position, 8/10 up on Ben Borman-ish, who would be there in P2. So as soon as the session ticks over, I think everybody's completed a lap. Guy Sever is... Oh yeah, the session was changing. So as the guys head into a driver brief and a warm-up, let's run through the results of qualifying. So Walter De Bruyn, a ridiculous time of 29.5, 9/10 up on Ben Borman, who in his own right has a fantastic time, being only the second driver to get into the 30s with a 30.4 rather. And then you got to go another 8/10 back to Ahmed Abdallah with a 1:31.1, which is a really fast time in its own right. So Borman and De Bruyn are absolutely dominating the pace, and you can see the Sauber Mercedes 2, 3, and 4 with Sovac and Stoll, the Kowalskis being 3rd and 4th. Fantastic qualifying for them. Tom Lane, 5th in the AM category with the Porsche. Jason Whitehead, Ross Smith, the 2nd on the Nookie Monsters. Paul J. Venter, Logistical Nightmare Mazda, the highest placing Mazda. Good qualifying performance for him. And Gilles Lalonde will hit P9. Or P10, sorry, when all is said and done. The timing got a little confused with Borman's re-entry of the server. George Angelidis, 11th. Eric Moynier, 12th. Adrian Rice will be 13th overall. And Brian Hall, not the best qualifying performance from him, I would imagine. He might not be excited with that. All the way back in P14 overall, followed by Roland Hagenars, Tom Mountjoy, Peter Mayer, Niall Bullion. I haven't seen that name before. These catch me off guard when all of a sudden there's a new name. Sorry. Matthew Overton will line up P19 with Guy Sever, P20. We got plenty more to come. James Andrew and Jerry Chen will start off our third page. Steve Carman, followed by John Mayer, followed by Barry DiMazzo. 3 Lucky Strike Mazdas in a row. 1 Purist, 2 AMs, being 23rd through 25th. Stephen Miller lines up next, followed by Tom Nacella, Oscar Dancourt, Jack Vermeulen, Ludwig Askinis. And these are getting into the no qualifying penalties, being Brad Nielsen Vestgaard as well, followed by Mark Jones and Leon Ganari. So a handful of no qualified penalties. Speaking of penalties, I will speak on penalties in a moment. There's quite a few that we were made aware of. But let's get all of the things back up so when we come back here, it doesn't look confusing. There we are. All right, so let's talk Monza. It's the 91 layout. So we have turns 1, 2, 3, and 4 are a couple of chicanes back to back with a nasty dip between 3 and 4 in the middle of that chicane. The road really just falls away for a little bit through Curva Grande, of course, and then the next pair of chicanes before you hit the 2 Lesmo corners, which are very, very tricky in these cars for sure. Then you have the long straight diving down to Ascari, which has a high curb on the inside, which is where you want to run and be aggressive if you're used to the modern layout, but it's not where you want to be on the apex of 11 here with these cars. And this particular curb layout replicating how it was in 1991, which is so cool. Ben Borman doing the track modeling and stuff like that for this representation of Monza. It's super cool, and we sort of have a unique track specifically for this league, and that is just awesome. Then you dive, of course, down to the Parabolica, similar to the modern layout, and then back across the line. So definitely a track that's going to favor the turbo cars, which would be the Sauber, the Porsche, and the Jaguar. No, the Nissan is the other turbo. Pop quiz time. The Jaguar, Peugeot, and Mazda, of course, naturally aspirated, have higher RPM range, but are probably still going to be struggling on this track compared to the turbo cars that can just let it scream down the straights. Alrighty, so let's take a look at what's next. Today is May 7th, and it's 2:30 of Monza, about 41 racing laps, or 40 racing laps with 1 pace lap. However, it is a distance race, so if we have things like rain or what have you, that will just make the lap times longer, but it doesn't make the race any shorter as it would in a timed race. So we will see out 40 racing laps here around Monza. A couple weeks later, we will have the 2.4 hours of Le Mans. It'll be a non-driver swap event for the 1991 historic Virtual World Sports Car Championship. So that will be awesome, and that will get us ready for what will be a driver swap event and a very long day at the office for everyone involved. The 4.8 hours of Le Mans back on the hypercars for June 18th, and then just a week later, we'll be back in the hypercars again for an hour of the Glen, which should be very fun and exciting. Let's take a look at some championship standings. Ben Borman will lead the way with 40 points, and he had 40 points last week. So the way that works is there's a drop round in effect. So despite winning and stuff like that, his drop round, or is it 2 drop rounds, he still has 40 points because it's 2 max points finishes with his 2 drop rounds. So it sort of will take a couple more races before the picture really starts to solidify a little bit more as people get into their first few races and also having their drop rounds take effect already this early in the championship, which makes it a little bit confusing, but it makes sense when you see it with the more expanded picture. This is, of course, just a small sliver of the picture of the championship standings, just to give an overall summary. But nevertheless, Ross Smith second place, and of course the two of them together taking Nookie Monsters to top of the Purist category Teams Championship, followed by the Lucky Strike Racing team, and that would be George Angelidis with substitute Dan Kirby coming in there and Steve Carman in 10th. So that is your team championship pictures. Kowalski Motorsports had a stronger opening in the first round, and then Kowalski himself has apparently dropped out of the championship. So Manuel Stoll has continued to fly the flag, and he'll be joined today by, was it Timon Sovic coming in to substitute for Kowalski for potentially the rest of the season. So that team entry might be able to get back on form and start to challenge Lucky Strike for second overall in the Teams Championship. Ahmed Abdallah, though, the strongest independent, sits at third with a good performance today in qualifying. And then James Andrew, Dan Kirby, Luciano Icazo, Peter Mayer, and Steve Carman round out your Purist drivers' top 10. In the pros, El Idrisi stomped his authority on the championship by winning the first two races. However, he was a no-show last week in Suzuka, and he's a no-show today. So that leaves the door open for Jason Whitehead to sort of properly take control of the Pro Championship. However, the man in third, Walter de Bruyn, just set the stormiest storming time around Monza I ever done see. So Walter de Bruyn will also be looking to take that championship lead, potentially just coming off of today's result alone. De Bruyn, I think, did miss a race or two himself. So coming back in flying form. Brian Hall, not the best qualifying performance for him today, but he does remain fourth in the championship. John Uyan paired with Matthew Overton for Dark Thunder Racing sits in P3 in the Teams Championship with Zwartenbol, Askinis, Kari Keskinen, we haven't seen for a few races, and Jacques Vermeulen in the Mazda. All right, moving over to the AM category. Eric Moyne, with a win to his name, leads the championship with John Mayer in second. They are the two sort of setting the pace in the Drivers' Championship as well as the Teams' Championship. However, Tom Lane has something to say about it today, qualifying in the top 10 overall, far beyond the other AM drivers. Guy Sever sits third with Leon Gennari in fourth, Barry DeMazzo, Dan Mignis, Cohen Garling, Tom Aitken, Stephen Miller, and Alfie Bevan. And from 6th down to 10th, the points are 14, 12, 12, 12, 12. So definitely more to play for getting into the top 5 in the 91 AM drivers. Moving on then to tire strategy. So again, the turbos are the ones that you'd expect to have the higher pace around here. And the leading strategy is definitely going to be to sit on a pair of Goodyear or Michelin hards for the entire race. And you'll need 2 stops to make it on fuel. However, Monza's lower tire wear compared to something like Sebring, for example, the prevailing strategy would be to not take tires. That is what the top guys will be doing. However, down the order, obviously, you got to do what you got to do. And that could be doing a couple of soft stints for the guys who want more performance. Again, it's less tire wear, so you can get away with longer stints on the soft, even potentially double stinting the soft for the splash at the end. And then, of course, the Mazdas have less of a choice. However, in the Tuesday race, there were some, let's call them brave Mazdas, that were doing the entire race on a set of super softs. So, yeah, didn't finish with much life left on the tire. It was pretty much down to the rim, it sounded like, but, they made it work. I still feel like probably going on the hard tire would be the better strategy there, and not changing. If you're going to go super soft, it sounds like a few of the guys did need to change tires anyway. And then I was the lone Yokohama hard tire up there on the Porsche, which didn't seem like the play because the Goodyear hard definitely would have made it till the end as well. So just being on the Yokohama hard was just, not a good idea. So don't do what I did. All right, I'm being buzzed. 1 second. I'm wearing all the hats today. Again, I apologize. All right, so we lost a couple cars on track, so they're going to do a quick little reset of the server. While that's happening, we can talk penalties. Penalties. I have so many tabs. I'm so sorry. Trying to negotiate all of these things. Ah, there we go. There's only 12 places to look. I should organize this a lot better. That's what I should do. All right, so we have some huge penalties for Jacques Vermeulen with a stop and hold plus 50, tallying up stop and hold 10s. So Vermeulen will have to peel off pretty early. Giddick Barbosa, who I don't believe is in attendance today, obviously was what it was in Suzuka with his driving performance, also picking up a stop and hold plus 50, plus stern warnings for avoidable contact, and a 3-race probation. So, yeah, you might have got your moment in the sun, but definitely didn't make any friends doing it. Joe Miller having a no qualifying, and we sort of saw that with a handful of the guys not being taking part in qualifying, including Esquinas and Mark Jones. Symbioni, Petravki also not having qualifying allowances today. However, I don't think they're in attendance, so that penalty will carry over. With Peter Merritt, James Andrew, Stephen Miller, and Matthew Overton all having stop and hold 10s themselves. So a lot of cars are going to be, peeling off into the lane to take their, stop and hold penalties. And you have 3 laps to do it. So we're going to have that pace lap and then a couple racing laps. And at the end of which, a lot of cars are going to be dropping out from the midfield or lower midfield and go take their stop and hold penalties, with a handful of cars already starting at the back with their no qualification. So definitely a lot of penalties, as you might expect with how eventful Suzuka was. All right, so restarted the server in the background to get everybody in. There were some disconnects, and we will be going green here momentarily. So let's take all that stuff off. And there is the man for the AMs, Tom Lane. An extremely pacey qualifying. And it sounds like we're going to be starting at the 5-minute mark of qualifying, so just a few minutes to go here. In warm-up, rather, not qualifying. So we can just get some nice scenic shots through the tree line. That's nice. I don't see Ben Borman in the server. Oh, there he goes. He's just joined back in. So yeah, Borman definitely having some technical difficulties today. It always seems to happen on the Saturday series. I think he's been pretty much nose to tail dominant in the Tuesday series, but Saturdays don't seem to be his days, as a couple of cars spun out on the left there. It's definitely a busy warm-up session. There's so many cars on track, and yeah, that's sort of what happens and what you can expect. Jerry Chen, one of those involved in some warm-up, spin-out shenanigans. All right, and here is the man Timon Sovic, who is coming to revitalize the Kowalski Motorsports team effort. So welcome to the series. I don't believe Timon has participated in any of the races thus far. As pulls out just in front of Matthew Overton, who's testing out where his pit box is. Interesting double stacked pit boxes here. So there are like 2 columns of pit boxes to prevent it so that 2 or sometimes even 3 drivers weren't sharing a pit box. So the solution was to add a second column of pit boxes to the lane. So that could make it very interesting if a lot of cars pit at the same time, and you get sort of boxed in between the garages on the right and another column of cars on the left. So like I said on one of the previous races, it's kind of like airplanes. You want to be on the aisle seat so that you're not impeded getting out. And that goes when you have a dual column setup like we've been created here to prevent that issue, or when you're sharing boxes and you got to go side by side apparently, which is still just like one of the funniest things to me to see guys stacked side by side like that. But yeah, nonetheless, about 30 seconds to go here, and then we'll get going for our pace lap. Let's see if timing's back. Timing is back. Better late than never. I have a cat meowing at me, so before the race starts, let me go take care of that real quick. So let's enjoy some onboards with Ross Smith. Alright, it's time to get serious. We got the pace lap going on, so again, De Bruyn will lead from Abdallah, Sovic, and Manuel Stoll. Ben Borman looks like not able to rejoin. Let me scroll on down here. Yeah, Ben Borman potentially... Well, not potentially, but will be massively disappointed because he did have one of the best cars in the Tuesday race and won the Tuesday race, so... yeah, bitterly disappointing for Ben Borman, who currently leads the championship. So it'll fall to Ross Smith to fly the Nookie Monsters flag on said Saturday. So De Bruyn, Abdallah, Sovic, Stoll, Tom Lane in the AMs, Jason Whitehead looking to take over the Pro Championship, Ross Smith in 7th, Paul J. Venter in 8th, George Angelidis 9th, Gilles Lalonde will bring out our... top 10, followed then by Eric Moyne, Adrian Rice, Brian Hall, Roland Hagenars, Tom Mountjoy, Peter Mayer, Niall Bullion, Matthew Overton, Guy Sever in 19th, with James Andrew rounding out the top 20. Jerry Chen will bring it in 21st with Steve Carman, 22nd, John Mayer, Barry DiMazzo, and Stephen Miller, followed by Tom Nacella in P26, with Oscar Downcourt in P27. Jacques Mullen, 28. P29, Ludwig Eskinis, who had a no qualification. Brad Nielsen Vestager. Mark Jones, also in a no qualification. Leon Gennarelli. And Pedro Cruz Gomez has joined the race, but did not qualify. I don't think he was in there in qualifying. And then a probably bitterly disappointed Ben Borman not taking the grid due to what, could only be described then as technical difficulties, with a couple of full-speed shunts into the wall in VR. So, yeah, disappointing then for Ben Borman. So, De Bruyn will take us around, and we're rather rapidly approaching where we need to be. It was a pretty speedy pace lap from De Bruyn. So we are about to go green. De Bruyn will lead us away right about now. Goes full throttle, and 40 laps remain. 40 racing laps will see us go through, as the cars in the back of the field aren't even through the parabolica yet. This is such a huge train of cars, as we all go through and negotiate turn 1 with relative ease. Turns 1 through 4, I should say. Gilles Lalonde already being hounded by George Angelides through the first couple of sequences. The Mazda very good, of course, through the first few chicanes. So we're all away relatively well. Julian in his very colorful 787B. Having a look at Peter Mayer ahead. And George Angelides is really on the back of Gilles Lalonde through that second pair of chicanes, now through the Lesmos. Walter De Bruyn with a handy lead already over Ahmed Abdallah, with a handy lead over Kowalski Motorsports, Timan Sovic. And Gilles Lalonde having a look around the outside of Venter, and will make it happen. Down into Ascari. George Angelides can't follow him through. Following him behind, Ross Smith. Let's get that battle box up. Ow. Let's see where we stand. Now, looks like Mark Jones and Bullion may have had a little bit of an incident towards the back of the field. Completely missed it as Venter gets snuck up the inside on by Mr. Angelides. De Bruyn crosses the line to start lap 2. And Jason Whitehead dives to the outside of Tom Lane. Gilles Lalonde to the inside of Ross Smith just behind, and George Angelides, or Paul J. Venter, has spun out as a result of an absolute carnage on the first couple of chicanes, and it's led to an absolute cluster. As the 3 Lucky Strike Mazdas try to go through, there's a car there beached on the inside. It's absolute mayhem in the first few chicanes. Didn't happen on lap 1. But lap 2 will not disappoint in terms of the carnage department. Handful of cars, clipped bumpers there. For the most part, we're all okay as Peter Mayer gets a little aggressive, following down into Ascari, and we'll have to take evasive action on that. It's all sort of kicked off. Esquinas here with his no quali. It's getting a little bit to the inside, and who was that just behind him? That was Cruz Gomez. And we have another casualty in the background as a result of all that. Pace differences caught a few cars out there. So now Brian Hall on the back of Roland Hagenars. Let's see, we'll go down. Meanwhile, on the front of the field, it's all a little more calm as De Bruyn has a massive lead over Abdallah, who has a massive lead over Sovic, so it's all sort of spaced out as Brian Hall goes to the inside of Hagenars, can't quite make the move, and will lose out a huge chunk of momentum in the meantime. So not the move he would have wanted. Now he's in danger of being catched then by Jerry Chen and a Lucky Strike Mazda behind of John Mayer. See how it goes. Chen's having a look. He's having a look. He wanted to go, but Brian shuts the door on him on the outside. We'll follow on through. Jerry Chen then under attack from John Mayer behind. Meanwhile, Ross Smith wants back at Gilles Lalonde. Oh, and he locks up the rears! Ross Smith locked up the rears in that exact moment, braking for the Lesmos of all places. James Andrew then going at it with Guy Sever. Sever runs a little bit wide on the first Lesmo, and they'll all keep it together through the second. Meanwhile, Chen, Mayer, Carmen, and Damaso, the Lucky Strike train, continues with Esquinas trying to make the moves on the group from behind. As the teams cycle through Ascari, a little bit on the high curbs there was John Mayer, but it'll all keep it together. And this train of 5 is our closest on track, with the guys ahead, again continuing to space out a little bit as all their paces start to set in. As I say that though, Eric Moyne and Tom Mountjoy are absolutely going at it, and I believe Tom Mountjoy has then made the move into P10, although he locks up into turn 1 and skips over the curb. It, like I said in quality, doesn't let you back over. Tom Mountjoy has lost his bumper for the second Monza race in a row. Well, he's got 35 laps of experience driving without a bumper from Tuesday's race. However, that damage looks to be quite a bit more severe. He might need to park it. Meanwhile, that train that just went by was the Lucky Strike train of Mayer, Carmen, and Damaso. Damaso having to look at fellow Mazda team racer Steve Carmen. Not quite close enough to do anything about it. Chen is getting a little bit of a gap as a result of all this. As Mark Jones and Brian Hall was having a move on Roland Hagenars, and something happened to take them all to... Oh, Brian Hall spun up the tires coming out of it, was it? And then Hagenars, was he waiting, or what exactly happened there? Just completely flew off the track afterwards, right in front of the Chen train. Let's try to go back to live here. Oh, we got a car spun, and that is Roland Hagenars spun out in front of 7 cars. I think they all avoid him. He's having a really hard time getting that car facing the right way as a result of all that. So Hagenars with a pretty disastrous lap this time around. Sort of all gone wrong for him, as well as Gilles Lalonde, who has had a massive shunt through the first chicane. Potentially has beached it there as he gets right in front of the number 44. Lalonde not having a great moment as these guys shuffle through their chicane. Lalonde through. Let's get through on back to the Chen train. Damaso, I think, has gone through Mayer and Carmen, so Damaso's made up some spots in there, and now he's going to be the one to take the move on Jerry Chen. Chen doesn't want to give him the inside that easily. He'll get up on the high curbs. As a result, he'll lose the spot there to John Mayer, then, who's all over Jerry Chen and gets a move around the outside of the first Lesmos. Jerry Chen drops a spot. Mayer goes up. Damaso's onto the grass just behind. And Gennari has made up all of the speed in the last little bit here. Looking around the outside is Gennari, and he will make the move stick. Gomez not able to get around the Sauber of Damaso, but he was in the end there. Holy cow, this group in the middle has all the makings, as Angelides to the inside of Tom Lane in the Parabolica. Now Tom Lane will have the better car. Oh, that wasn't the Paragon, sorry, that was the Curva Grande. So Tom Lane will have to settle there because he can't quite stretch his legs enough. In the next section of the track, Ross Smith following in behind. Gennari goes through on John Mayer, so Gennari is absolutely flying in those times, but he takes too much into T1 and 2, and again we have a car exploding over the curbs. And that has put passed about 5 or 6 cars in a few laps and has thrown it away in T1 and 2, clipping the inside of that curb. As Barry DiMazzo gets passed by Pedro Cruz Gomez, who will also get Jerry Chen into Ascari. Is all kicked off. Now, Angelitas and Lane have actually swapped, but Angelitas gets back around after T4. So now, back through the Curva Grande, Angelitas leads Lane. Oh my god, no, now this is the Parabolica, where Lane will be able to stretch his legs a little bit. Angelitas wants to get back on that line, but Lane is there and has earned the right to road. Angelitas so much later on the brakes, though. If he can keep from exploding on the T2 curb, he will hold the spot. Lane taking a good chunk of curb, and Tom Mountjoy is going to be to the inside through Curva Grande. Now I know where we are on track. Ross Smith trying to slot in behind, but can't quite hang with these guys. So Tom Lane, what a performance. Alright, Esquinas around the outside of Jerry Chen, looking at T1. He'll have the racing line, so he'll make it all happen with that Sauber's straight line pace. Now, Esquinas will be looking at a handful of Mazdas ahead, and should, on the straightaways, be able to do similar work with that Sauber's absolute screaming speed down the straights. He might be having a look now, already, on DiMazzo, and he'll make it happen. Oh, as we have a car off on the side, is that Cruz Gomez? It is! He was on a big recovery drive, and he's chucked it away at the exit to Ascari. So Esquinas now has dropped back a little bit on Mayer. Didn't have the best run through the Lesmos, and DiMazzo is trying to have a little look at him as well. Meanwhile, Matthew Overton's caught up to the party and wants a piece of Jerry Chen. Walter de Bruin, by the way, still leads by 8 seconds over Abdallah, who's 7 seconds ahead of Sovic, so it's really spaced out there at the top. Now it's going to be time for Esquinas to stretch his legs down the straight. He'll easily have the move on DiMazzo there, sorry. And we'll be looking at the third, then, Lucky Strike. Every time he passes a Lucky Strike Mazda, there's another one ahead of him. But easily done into T1. Go through 3 and 4. DiMazzo takes a big chunk of curb, and that was almost disaster for him, getting caught by the inside line. Having a look to the inside, not quite close enough as Esquinas continues his recovery drive off a no quali penalty. I'll have to wait a little bit for Mayer through the Lesmos. Getting a few updates from various parties, apologies. Alright, now we're getting to where it's going to be time. Esquinas to the inside before Ascari even will make the move on Mayer. Trying to get that Sauber stopped on the apex. And he will do so. Now, I would expect that to be a clean run away. Meanwhile, it looks like Tom Lane has dropped back a little bit. Ross Smith has gotten through. Nielsen Vestergaard just ahead. They'll go to the inside. Both of them. Tom Lane trying to go with them, and he will actually take the note, go inside of Ross Smith as well, but hits the curb and goes flying as a result. Smith has made it through all that. Tom Lane had a very exciting curb ride there as well. So the high curb's absolutely the story of the first 10 or so laps. Multiple casualties over the high curbs. And Tom Lane took to the skies, Mark Webber style. Jason Whitehead is on the back of Manuel Stoll. Whitehead's been having a bit of a recovery from his qualifying position. He's up a few places now. As Steve Carman and Adrian Rice get all tangled up with Matthew Overton. What in the world has happened there? Let's grab a replay of this situation. So the Lucky Strike is going through. 4 gets caught on the curb. Meanwhile, Matthew Overton is recovering, which catches the 56 out, and all 3 of them are going to get caught on the exit of 4. Ooh-wee. Alright, let's check in with Eric Moyne. Oh, Eric Moyne and Bullion gets caught on that same turn 4 curb. He's gonna get caught. He was just catching Eric Moyne. And Moyne will be safe as Bullion also a casualty over the curb, this time not losing the front end completely. Not in terms of understeer, in terms of literally still having a front end attached to the car after hitting those turn 2 or turn 4 curbs. So, let's check back in here with Whitehead then. Still on the back of Manuel Stoll. We have some cars running wide on Ascari in the background there, kicking up a lot of gravel. Whitehead's going to have a hard time, it looks like, catching Stoll. Obviously, the Sauber, the strongest car in the straights, and through here, of course, we are back on that, you know, straight line running where the Sauber can really stretch his legs. Even with any little semblance of draft he had, Stoll still pulled out another 0.8 of a second just through that turn 1. Now, that battle we were seeing behind was these guys, Miller and Venter. Venter was trying to have a look to the inside. Miller didn't want to give it easy. Takes evasive action, and I think Miller is going to potentially let off the throttle to let Venter by. It's a way of giving. I'm not entirely sure he needed to do that because I don't think Venter was properly alongside. However, in doing so, he's lost the spot to the Lucky Strike Mazda. I don't think that's for position. I can't quite tell which Mazda that is. That could be Angelitas. So Venter will take the spot and move on with his day. Now, Chen's been in the thick of it. He's now behind Barry DiMaggio. Let's see what we can do. We have a couple cars coming out of the lane. Jack Vermeulen's coming out of the lane. Peter Mayer's coming out of the lane. So it's all a little bit tight into T1 here. We'll get through it with relative ease. It's Chen now just 7/10 behind DiMaggio. Speaking of Vermeulen, he's come out right behind Steve Carman. That's who it was. That was in the mix of it. So these Mazdas are going to go side by side down the home straight. Jason Whitehead is getting very racy with Manuel Stoll, so we'll switch over to that. Oh, see, every time a car is getting up higher on those curbs, I'm just expecting the explosion. You take just a little bit too much and that front end gets caught on the hitbox of the curb coming back over. Yeah, we've already seen a few times what that results in. So Whitehead has dropped back a little bit. He's definitely pushing that Nissan through its paces, but it's not enough to catch up to the army of Saubers that take positions 2 through 4. However, the Porsche of Walter de Bruyn still absolutely screaming away with a 15-second lead over the first of the Saubers, Abdallah, who is your Purist class leader. So Whitehead's definitely able to catch up through these sections. You see now it's only down to 0.6 of a second, where it spaces out to over 1.7 at certain cases. But then we get into these 2 back-to-back straights, and he just can't do it. However, they are catching Sovic ahead. So these guys are running actually a little bit faster than Sovic just ahead of them. Manuel Stoll's Kowalski Motorsports teammate. I don't know if that's because Sovic maybe got a little bit checked up in traffic there. I think we've finally calmed down a little bit. Stoll potentially impeded here a little bit by traffic. It's going to go 1 through 4 behind the Mazda. Trying to see on the map here who that might be. We will get around the Mazda this time around, so Whitehead will take his turn getting stuck behind. Whitehead to the inside, and the Mazda's not going to give it to him! The Mazda's not going to give it to him, and that was Steve Carman. Whitehead with the blue flag was trying to get through on Steve Carman, and it hasn't worked out for Carman, who wanted to take that line as it stood. Hall to the inside of Guy Sever will make the move into turn 1. That seemingly came out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Brad Nielsen Vestager is on the back of Roland Hagenars. Nielsen Vestager, again, hasn't had a great introduction to the race. He had a similarly troubled start to the Suzuka race. That McDonald's car. And this is just ahead of Hall and Sever. So that 44 there, that's going to be Brian Hall. Steve Carman is still parked on the outside. Nielsen Vestager trying to let the cars through. Almost clips Guy Sever on the way out. So let's switch over to that Guy Sever. As Timon Sovic... Oh, he's hit the lane. That's what's happened. Sovic is going to hit the lane along with Manuel Stoll. So the pit stop rotation potentially starting for the guys on even splits on their fuel. Again, it's going to be a 2-stop race. Stoll and Sovic the first to blink in the top 10. Hall is going to maintain from Guy Sever for the time being. Oh, as we have a Peugeot in the wall, the 31. Who was that then? Paul J. Venter, potentially? Or no, Adrian Rice, I believe. As Hall and Sever will pass the parked Saubers, each with 50 seconds on their pit. So that would imply just a full tank. Okay, so it's 50 seconds for fuel, 20 seconds for tires. Oh, as Sever takes a lot of the T4 curb. Alright, so just tires for the Kowalski boys. That is what you want to be doing. You don't want that extra 20 seconds for tires. Just fuel, rather, I meant to say. Because we got a couple of cars going side by side in the back. That's not these boys. And there you go. You see the double column there. So Jerry Chen on the inside. Car, and that's Jason Whitehead. Also a big name pitting from the lead pack. So Smith will then occupy P3. And these guys run late. These Peugeots run late. So they're going to have a slightly longer stint as Smith takes, again, a lot out of the T4 curb. The guys need to be careful on that. We've seen so many cars explode. Tom Lane being one of them who's had a rough time as he meets up with George Angelidis again. Neither of these guys have... Oh, George Angelidis has stopped. Tom Lane, I don't think, stopped after... flying through Ascari, quite literally. But now, on the run through the home straight, he should be able to put the pace on Angelidis a little bit. Angelidis will go tight on the line, driver's right. Lane, though, will have all the speed to take it round the outside. Angelidis wants to hang in there. He wants to hang in there, but Lane's got the inside line. Angelidis is going to dive to the inside, though. Brilliant move from George Angelidis. He knew he was a lot later on the brakes. Last time these guys were together, that Mazda is absolutely hooked up for the braking zone. It is the most stable. It definitely has the latest braking into turn 1. He'll get back around Lane, but now Lane has the straight line advantage again, Angelitas ahead, tries to take the full line. Lane can't cut back across. Angelitas gets checked up by traffic though. Tom Lane then around the outside of him and will take the spot. All right, the big hitters are in. De Bruin and Abdallah. There they are. De Bruin, the 31 Sauber, just behind the timing screen on the left there. And then De Bruin, the car we're seeing, the black and white car ahead, will weave through the two of them as our two leaders are both sitting on fuel. De Bruin's actually taking tires. De Bruin took tires. Abdallah didn't, and De Bruin still gets out ahead of Abdallah. So De Bruin took advantage of his lead just to get fresh rubber. Guy Sever makes up all the places and then some. With the guys pitting, Sovic has pitted. Or I'm sorry, Sovic has not pitted either, and is now looking at the back of Guy Sever. Meanwhile, we have Meyer and Moyne both hitting the lane as well. Yeah, that double stacked pit lane is absolutely the way to go as Sovic to the inside of Guy Sever, but runs off wide on exit to the second set of chicanes. Now through the Lesmos, Sever will probably have the advantage through here, and Sovic's going to need to be patient a little bit. Get back onto the run to Ascari, and then potentially after Ascari or into T1, he'll have his moment, assuming that neither of these guys finally take their first stop. Meanwhile, these guys are just all lighting up the timing screens in pit lane as they're shuffling and buffling around. Julian's going to make up some ground there. He will get out ahead of Mayer, and Sovic can't quite do it to the inside of Sever into the Parabolica, but now we'll be able to stretch the Sauber's legs, and it should be an easy run to T1 for Timon Sovic. Third in the Purists, with Ross Smith leading, yet to stop, of course. Sovic is going to try to get inside of the Kenwood Porsche at the same time, and it will catch out Guy Sever. So Sovic has played this beautifully to grab fourth and put some space in between him and Sever, who is now being hounded by Whitehead. Whitehead around the Kenwood, and Whitehead has stopped. So Whitehead really just wants to clear these guys and get back to his own race. He will be looking to the inside of Guy Sever. Guy Sever doesn't really want to give it to him, but he might have to. No, they're going to hang out side by side through the second pair of chicanes. Whitehead just pinched between the grass and a Sever place. Whitehead will make the move, though, through the Lesmos and be off on his way. Well done. Manuel Stoll, then, trying to follow suit. Stoll is also pitted. And he's racing Whitehead for position there. That's just a second and a half, so Whitehead will be happy. Oh, as he clips the high curb there. Driver's left. He'll be happy to have Sever as a little bit of a buffer between him and Stoll. Sever is there for position, of course, so he's able to race. Smith finally will hit the lane. He's almost able to one-stop it, is Smith, but without some good fuel saving, I don't think that's going to happen. So Smith will fill up and be on his way. He's currently in the lane now, so Whitehead will get back around Smith. Or has Smith already left? Smith is ahead. A few seconds ahead. I believe that's a change in the pit lane, as Stoll does clear Sever just behind. So Guy Sever's dropped back a few places. He's the second highest runner that hasn't stopped. Actually, Timon Sovic in the Sauber has yet to stop as well. Is that right? Or has this timing screen just messed up something? According to this, Sovic has yet to stop, and he might be going for a one-stopper, which would very much throw in the mix to be fighting Abdallah for first overall in the Purist, if he indeed is going to try to one-stop this race. He's only 9 seconds behind Abdallah. And if he can save 20, 30, 40 seconds on a fuel splash, that would be huge for Sovic. I just don't understand. Is that right? Because I thought I remembered both Kowalski Motorsports cars pitting together. So I think the timing screen might be lying to me, but if we see Sovic pit in the next couple of laps here, then we'll know he is indeed going for that one stopper. Meanwhile, Angelides has caught back up to Tom Lane. Traffic potentially paying a factor there as he goes to the inside. Not gonna quite have it. Tom Lane's gonna take the longer way around the Parabolica, but will be able to stretch the legs a little bit. Now, how can Angelides hang in the draft? Sever hits the lane. Sever might be going for a one-stopper in his own right. Angelides trying to take the full line round the outside, braking. He will make it happen. He has a little bit of a tag with Tom Lane. But it's just good hard racing into the first couple of chicanes. George Angelides is making all the moves into the turn 1 braking zone. That's got to be his favorite part of the track. As Guy Sever and James Andrew are going to pit together. Take a look at Ross Smith. Oh, and Brian Hall is going to get back around them. Hall has pitted. Sever and Andrew are coming out. Tom Lane has made up the ground back again. In the straightaways, he's stretching that Manta Squid Porsche's legs in the straights. Angelides will look to give a good run through Parabolica again and have that heavy braking zone. It's almost like 30, 40 meters braking later. It might not actually be braking too much later, but it's just, yeah, it's a little bit later and heavier braking from Angelides, I believe. That's really making that difference there and why you see that big delta. Even though the guys might be braking, you know, potentially a little earlier that he's racing against, they need a longer braking zone to get that car stopped. Whereas the brakes of the Mazda just seem to be on fire. So that was actually pretty even there on braking. Some Tom Lane following the Angelides braking line. We have a car weaving just behind them. I'm trying to figure out who that is. It's so hard to tell on this map. It's Adrian Rice. Man, that took a long time to figure out. Adrian Rice there, following in behind, who's a lap or two down on these guys. 20 laps to go, so we hit that halfway point. De Bruyn, 10-second lead. It was much higher, but he used the lead advantage to, you know, take those tires on top of everybody else. Potentially needs it with the kind of pace he's running. He might be burning that rubber. All right, now Tom Lane. This is going to be his time again. He didn't close in as much on that back straight as I would have thought. Potentially with his, you know, flying out over the curb, it may have hurt his arrow a little bit. But he is going to hit the lane there. So that's for his first stop. So he is going for a one-stopper, whereas Angelides has already stopped. So in the long run, you know, Tom Lane could actually be ahead of Angelides on track if you factor in pit lane math. Angelides has yet to take his second stop. Now I'm just confused because Sovic, has he really not pitted yet? I gotta look on the other screen and see. According to two different sources, Sovic has 0 pit stops. According to Live Racers and according to the rFactor 2 TV client, Sovic has 0 pit stops, and we're on lap 22. Big if true, as the internet folks say. Big if true. Smith is catching in behind now in the Peugeot, but he doesn't pit again. So this is fantastic from Sovic if that is true. I swear I saw both Kowalskis earlier pit together. But maybe not. Jerry Chen, by the way, is being absolutely hounded by another Lucky Strike car. He's just seen Lucky Strike cars his entire race. And John Mayer is trying to keep that tradition going. Meanwhile, Vermeulen in the other Mazda is having a look at Peter Mayer just ahead of Ross Smith there. So these guys are 2x2 on track. All kicking off for that 15-ish position. Ross Smith not for position. He's actually a lap ahead of these guys. So we'll see how we go. De Bruyn still leads over Abdallah, who is 11 seconds ahead of Sovac, allegedly yet to stop. I have a hard time believing that, but that's what the numbers say. So Mayer not quite able to hang with. I think we have a Peugeot missing a front end there. Oh no, that's a Lucky Strike Mazda missing a front end. So that could be Barry DiMazzo, who's definitely taken some curbing and left part of his car there with him. So this could leave Jerry Chen and John Mayer some space to catch up, as Vermeulen is side by side with Meyer. He will get ahead of Meyer. Meyer seemingly did not get a good run out of the Parabolica. Vermeulen will make that move. We know the Mazdas are going in the braking zone into T1, so we'll keep that position. Alright, now let's check back in with Mayer then. John Mayer has Ross Smith going to the inside. Smith third in the Purist, fourth overall. Few seconds either way. Doesn't lose time in traffic there. Chen has used this, though, to bring out a 1.5 second advantage over him, as Tom Mountjoy is just going to scream past Oscar Dancourt. As Tom Mountjoy continues his recovery drive. So, back to the Mayer train. Yeah, Jerry Chen's been able to put the gap between. Jerry Chen is not going to give Ross Smith an easy time by. That's all well and fine. However, this time around, Ross Smith will be looking to the inside as Sovic goes to the inside of Barry DiMazzo. Ross Smith will take Jerry Chen into the braking zone. So again, Smith then 3 seconds behind Sovic, but if Sovic really hasn't pitted, then Sovic is on one of the most extreme fuel-saving runs I've ever seen.
And that would be pretty spectacular, wouldn't it, Troy?
Hey, Mr.
There we are. I apologize I couldn't be there from the start. I have actually been watching, though, on the journey to my studio. So I have been keeping an eye on everything that's been going on. So, yeah, very intriguing from Sovic, because this is genuinely a much longer fuel stint than we expected from him. But he's surely only got about 3 or 4 laps to run before he's backed into a corner, essentially.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, even the predominant strategy on Tuesday's race was 2 stops, with Smith and Borman going long stops or long stints on the Peugeot and still needing a splash at the end. De Bruyn has taken that same strategy but up a notch, with just screaming his Porsche around and then still taking tires on top of it. But yeah, this is absolutely ridiculous from Sovic. That's true, as Brian Hall is getting all into it with his skiness. He couldn't quite find his way by.
So a very tricky battle there for Hall. He is going to try and make Skinnis basically go a little bit ugly onto the brakes into the first chicane. I have to say, I do love these traditional Variante Goodyear chicanes. They are so much better than the current generation. Great to see them back in the Group C 1991 Virtual World Sports Car Championship here at Monza. Great battles all the way through. De Bruyn is staying steady at about 12 seconds on Abdallah, although I note that he's lost a bit of ground on that part of the course and then gained it all back again, so clearly a slower section of the circuit. Suvik still third from Smith and Whitehead, and then Stoll doing a great job. Here is the battle further back. This is Vermeulen and Mayer having a little bit of a tussle for position as they continue to make their progress. But this race really has taken out a lot of drivers through the course of proceedings. There's been a very high attrition rate around the Monza circuit. It's not for the faint of heart, and certainly it has bitten the Group C drivers tonight. But De Bruyn's still keeping it steady at about 11.5 to 12.5 seconds from Abdallah, and you can see the scalps still on these cars that the circuit really has taken. It's bitten back on several occasions here as we watch Vermeulen trying to get on terms with Jerry Chen. They have got a faster car in between them, so that could make things a little bit more interesting. So obviously now Vermeulen can be smart here. He can just tow in the slipstream down the straight and try and get close enough to Jerry Chen to make his bid at the same time. So the leader's going to go through. Abdallah will get through past into position there, and that's going to hold up Jerry Chen. This is what Vermeulen's hoping for. If Chen gets a little bit held up, then Vermeulen can have a run on the run to the Parabolica, and Jerry Chen does get a little bit loose in the dirty air. So Vermeulen can go side by side here with Jerry Chen. He tucks back in for a little bit more slipstream, trying to make his way through to the inside of the Parabolica, but he's got to commit if he wants to. But no, see, Jerry Chen is so aggressive on the line there. You're never going to get the overtaking move there. You need to have the space to make it happen. It's out of the Parabolica where you can really make the draft happen. So Vermeulen in the tow of Jerry Chen down the main straight. And surely Chen is going to be a sitting target at the braking zone, but he's got to place the car in the right place for Vermeulen to respond to it. This is going to be a late braking from Vermeulen. Oh, he just loses the car on wash on the inside of the left apex.
And this has given John Mayer in the Lucky Strike an ability to catch back up, along with Peter Mayer is hanging in the background. They're just at the back of the shot. So the three of them are coming together now as Chen and Vermeulen negotiate with traffic and try to negotiate these corners, racing each other. John Mayer's been able to take advantage in the Lucky Strike just behind, and now the Lucky Strike that's been missing its front end for a bit there might be holding up Jerry Chen through the Lesmos, and Vermeulen's going to be inside to the second Lesmo, and he'll make it stick on the inside of the second Lesmo, just barely holds it onto the track, and this is going to give Chen potentially some ability as Chen catches the high curb on the inside there. So Chen, with the potentially faster car on the straight, could be able to come back here on the dive down to T1.
What a terrific battle this is for 13th. Damaso, Vermeulen, Chen, Maya, and Mayer. Absolutely sensational, these five. All within about 3 seconds of each other tops. Now Vermeulen's going to try and make his bid on Damaso. No problem at all to get through into the Parabolica. So Vermeulen hits the front of the train. Now Jerry Chen is going to want his opportunity. It's yellow in Sector 3. Well, we're in Sector 3, so we're not entirely sure whereabouts on the course it is. I would guess that's probably up at the Variante della Roggia, or possibly even at the Ascari chicane. But Whitehead and Suvik finally come in. So Suvik has finally brought his car into the pits. That took a while, but he has now finally decided enough is enough. We did say it was only going to be, 3 or 4 laps more before he was backed into the corner, and that's exactly where Suvik found himself. So now that Chen's got in front of Damaso, Damaso into the back of Chen. Oh, big mistake from Damaso. He just got a little bit too close to Chen over the top of the curbs, and I'm afraid he's made contact with the rear of his car.
Yeah, absolutely. He pulls off to the side to let it all play back out, but Chen got around on the straight, and Damaso, we know the Lucky Strikes are so good in the braking, and yeah, that delta in speed into the apex of the T1-2 chicane has caught Damaso out, and he gave Jerry Chen a little bit of a punt. Gave the spot back, so a little bit of no harm, no foul, but Jerry Chen was absolutely looking racy there.
But, and looking at Damaso's car, if you look back at Damaso, look, he's got smoke coming off that car. So I think he's actually got some big damage. He actually came through the chicane and he got loose on the curb, but I thought he had a little bit of smoke aside from just running wide. Maybe it's just my eyes playing tricks on me, but certainly Damaso, he's already taken a fair bit of damage to that Lucky Strike car as it is. So now he's running the risk of even more, as he's obviously got Venter only about 1.5 seconds behind him now as well. This is Maya and Mayer having their little tussle, and Mayer in the Mazda trying to get closer to the lucky strike of John Meyer. So a good battle as they come down the main straight again, and into the pits has come Stoll, but he's not the only one into the pits either, because Angelidis has come in from P5 as well. We just saw him ducking for the pits there. So Stoll and Angelidis both coming in, and that obviously gives De Bruyn the lead by nearly 12 seconds to Abdallah, and then Smith in third. That's going to bring Moyne up into position 4, and Jason Whitehead should just about filter in around the same sort of position on the circuit, around the top 6.
So these guys, Mayer and Meyer, say that 5 times fast, are the ones who got out of that melee with Chen a little bit unscathed. Mayer did get clipped a little bit, and that has allowed Meyer to kind of close the gap a little bit. Sector time suggests they're pretty even, with maybe an advantage to Mayer, actually. So we'll see if Meyer can hold. It's like,
you're enjoying that, aren't you?
It's kind of fun in a way.
Well, we've just had another DNF by the look of it. Unfortunately, we seem to have lost Guy Sever. So Guy Sever has had a bit of a problem, as into the pits comes Askinis. So Askinis in the Sauber Mercedes. Out onto the circuit again comes Angelidis, and that's Hall having just gone through. So Moyne is indeed through into 4th place, ahead of Whitehead and Hall, and then we join George Angelidis, who rejoins in 7th place, just in front of Suvic. So that's where Suvic filters out in all of it, just ahead of Bullion and Stoll, who is technically only just got out of the pits in P10, ahead of Lane and Askinis. So interesting how it all shuffles out in terms of the deck of cards, but Hall is leading this train. Angelidis is within 2 seconds. Right in behind is Suvic. So Suvic and the Sauber Mercedes could have another chance to attack here and go for the top 6, especially now he's on fresher tyres and he's only got 12 laps to run. So Suvic may, by making this late call on the fuel and having fresh tyres towards the end, he may actually be able to gain himself back some time with a bit of a charge forward. Here he goes, side by side with Angelidis. He's going to leave Angelidis totally standing here. Suvic absolutely storms around the outside, no questions asked.
That was, I think Angelidis didn't have a great run through the Lesmos and had to maybe lift a little bit as he clips the curb on the inside. So that won't have been how he wanted to defend from Suvic. And yeah, Suvic absolutely good run through the Lesmos and let the Sauber scream down the straight.
And of course, Suvic is looking for a podium finish in class as well, whatever happens, as long as he can finish ahead of Angelidis. So that's what that was for.
Yeah.
3rd position in class. It's quite important to him to get onto the rostrum, as behind them into the pits comes Bullion, I think. So Bullion coming into the pits from P9. That's going to give 9th position back over to Stoll, and Lane is going to get his way back into the top 10.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lane is actually on the back of Stoll for 10th overall. And with Bullion hitting the lane, that's actually going to give Tom Lane 2nd in the AMs. Still trying to chase down Manuel Stoll.
You've got to give credit to Moyne. I mean, he is the leader in the AM category and 4th overall. What a drive this is from Moyne in the Akiri Mistral car. Great to see him doing such a great performance here. As we watch Suvic, he's obviously got past Angelidis and dropped him. Now he's going to try and take on the Jaguar of Hall. So this is obviously going to be an interesting one. They've got, just timed that to perfection to get past the back marker. But certainly for Suvic, he wants to really start to attack the drivers up in front, and Angelidis using the back marker to good advantage there as well. But Suvic chipping away at Hall's advantage. There's only about a second and a half or so in it. So Suvic, you can see just how leery that Sauber Mercedes is. It's ridiculously quick in a straight line, but through the corners it really does like to chop and change the center of gravity as it transfers. It really does wash out in certain corners over the curbs. So Suvic really having to wrestle with the car in terms of pure pace.
Yeah, and he's doing pretty good on sector times. Obviously, here's where we're going to see how much of a difference. It was 1.5 coming off Parabolica. It's already halfway down the straight to 1.1. And he's maybe even, that's forcing Brian Hall to go defensive down to 0.6. I mean, it's 0.8 of a second in the straight. That is going to be huge as he, gets down to the pointy end of this race. Suvic is absolutely have his crosshairs on Hall.
Do you know, to be fair, I think he's going to have him into Della Roggia. I thought he was going to have a try into Ascari, but he's going to get there. By the time they get to the Della Roggia, into the left-hander. No problems at all. Hall has no response there. Now all Suvik's got to do is tidy it up through the chicane. Job done. Hall tries to get him on the undercut, but already Suvik has got the advantage in terms of straight line speed, so no problems at all there for Suvik. Yellow in Sector 3 for a while, but into the pits comes Ahmed Abdallah. So Abdallah has come into the pits from what was P2. So obviously that's an interesting one. Abdallah going to make a late splash and dash by the look of it then, as he will filter out again in third position behind Smith.
And I would thought that this would have given Angelides a little bit of pace to get on the back of Hall, but Angelides potentially, if he's doing what he did on the Tuesday race, he ran the super soft Dunlops the entire race. So if he's doing that again, he might not have really the pace through these chicanes. And
De Bruyne's pitted. De Bruyne is pitted, so is Moyne. So De Bruyne and Moyne both pit on lap 32. So this is an important one. Wouter De Bruyne in the Porsche comes down pit road, and so too has, I think that's Mazzaro, isn't it? That's come into the pits there. DeMarzo coming into the pit road as well. Or is that, no, I think that might actually be Mayer that's coming into the pits. In comes Smith. So Smith comes into the pits as well. So these are the last pit stops then for the leading troop of drivers. So Wouter De Bruyne should filter out with the lead still intact. That's 34 seconds dead for Wouter De Bruyne. Looking good for the victory now.
Yeah, it wasn't even a full tank then, so he took a full tank and tires, and then just about a half a tank, or a little over half a tank, to get to the end. So, I mean, perfection from De Bruyne this whole race. We haven't really talked about him much as he gets a little tail happy.
You nearly jinxed him, goodness me.
Oh my, and Smith on a similar thing, 27.4, so again, the splash is all Smith needs to bring it out. First in the Purist, though, so we shouldn't understate that. Smith has got the better of Abdallah here.
Yeah, really strong. Smith has managed to gain a massive amount of time, actually, on Ahmed Abdallah. So this is really good work indeed from the Peugeot driver. So Smith managing to get himself then into second position. He can be very proud indeed with that undercut. And so he is now the leader in the Purists. Wouter De Bruyne, leader in Pro. Smith, leader in Purists. And the leader in AM is now Lane. So obviously Lane has managed to inherit 8th position after the pit stop for Moyne. So this is where things get very interesting towards the end of the race. There's only about 15 seconds between Lane and Moyne. So the AM fight isn't done yet. With 9 laps to go, there could still be a very big switch at the end. Smith is still holding it together in the Purist. There are the class leaders, and there is the class as it is settled, as Hall comes into the pits now from 3rd position in the Pro category. But De Bruyne, Whitehead and Hall. There is Smith, who is leading the Purist ahead of Abdallah and Suvik. And then, of course, Lane, Moyne and Bullion is the order in the AM category. That's the podium as it looks at the moment, with only 7 contenders still running in Purist and 7 still running in AM. But then the Pro category, still a fair few cars ticking over in that one. But certainly for Smith, this is going nice and easy. But Abdallah is on that charge once again. So 2nd overall, still up for grabs for Ahmed Abdallah, as is the win in Purist.
Yeah, absolutely. The win in Purist is not settled, and I'm not entirely sure that Tom Lane is done on pit stops. So Tom Lane may have to give up the lead to Moyne as the pit stop battle takes its course. So we'll see. Both categories here. Pros does look to be sort of in hand. Oh, Smith! Smith, too much curb on 3.
What a save.
Oh, man, and we're just talking about Abdallah trying to get back to rears of Smith, and he feels the pressure. He was trying to take everything out of the 3-4 chicane complex, and this fight is not done as Smith runs wide.
I wonder if he's got tyres. If there's issue with tyres, has he just pushed them a little bit too hard? Because now he's struggling for grip. So he shouldn't have, because obviously he's just come out of the pits, having had a pit stop, Smith. So he should be able to hold on in front of Abdallah, but maybe he's just feeling the pressure on wheel spin. Oh, and that is Hall. Hall has dropped it in the Jaguar.
And that's going to give 3rd to Esquinas. Esquinas is coming right here. There's Esquinas in the Sauber.
Now, was Hall aided in getting there? Did he trip over a back marker, or did he do that all on his own? That's going to be the interesting question, as Abdallah has now closed to within 2 seconds, less than that even, of the race leader in Purist. So Smith and Abdallah very much on the same bit of straight. Now watch again. He's made massive gains down the back straight. Out of Parabolica, he could even be right on the gearbox of Smith's Peugeot as they go into the Variante Goodyear. So this is going to be an interesting one for Smith and Abdallah. Abdallah's going to open up the taps now on the Sauber Mercedes. Charge down the main straight. Gaining up towards the chicane, in through the left-right, and then through the second left-right. This is all about balance now for Ahmed Abdallah, and he really doesn't have to rush this. He's got plenty of time to take one over to Smith. He really just needs to be so calm and focused. Doesn't need to rush this at all. We're on board with Ahmed Abdallah. Helmet cam up towards the Variante della Roggia as well. It's going to be left and right. But the Sauber Mercedes, look, you even have to keep it under wraps through the chicane. You really have to throw your weight behind the steering just to get it to turn in and bite in the apex. And it's yellow in sector 1 behind us. Abdallah still very quick in a straight line, but he's able to keep mechanical grip through the turns. You can see just how much he is leaning on the car's center of gravity through these fast apexes. And look, in the draft, he's just eating up the road to Smith. He'll make the move into the Parabolica without any shadow of doubt as they go in through Ascari. Left, hold the apex, right. The car wants to wash away, but you've got so much travel on the inside apex that you've just got to let the car roll over in the apex, essentially. And that has actually cost Abdallah a little bit of time to Smith, so he's going to have to take his time, but they've got a slower car in front of the... Did you see how close he was to losing the back end in the dirty air to Smith? These cars really do wash out in the slipstream. But be so careful when you come into the braking zones. But now look, he'll have the slipstream, he'll eat the road. It's a bit like having DRS. He'll come straight through to the right side. That's where Smith's going to send him. They've got a slower car in the middle, and they do a Zonta on him as they come into the braking zone for Variante Goodyear, and Abdallah skates off the road. Now, that's going to be tricky. Can he hold the position there? No! Oh, Smith gets close to him, and they actually bang into each other. Now, question, Abdallah's move, is that clean, or is he going to have to concede?
I mean, it was around the outside, potentially ahead, but then he skipped T1, so it is interesting. He seems to think it's legal. Ross, no, he gives it up.
No, he's giving it back. That was sensible. Because he's got time. He's got time. He's got 6 laps. He can get this back again.
He's got the pace. He's got the time, so don't even risk it on getting a penalty for that move. Get the win and get into the next race without a penalty. This is super smart from Abdallah, who came into the race with a penalty and has come all the way through the field to be fighting Smith, and Fitz is going to go defensive into Ascari.
There's not a lot that he can do about it, though. Surely Abdallah's going to get there in the braking zone. Oh, hopping over the curves. Smith manages to keep Abdallah at bay just a little bit longer. Back on board. Cockpit cam this time with Abdallah. Down the straight, and you're going to see just how much speed he can gain in the straight and narrow. Coming up towards the hairpin again. So much stronger and so much more confident on the brakes, the Sauber Mercedes, than the Peugeot. And you're going to see again into Variante Goodyear. This is almost certainly going to be easy as pie for Ahmed Abdallah, but it's easier said than done. Here he goes, eating up the road. Slipstream goes right again. That's where Smith's going to hold him. There's no back marker this time, but Smith is really going to race him to the braking zone. Abdallah tucks in, and again he goes off the road at Variante Goodyear. Again, he can't quite hold it in the chicane. This is a brilliant battle.
Yeah, they had to be super careful, though, because we've seen the back of those curbs destroy people's front end bumpers and hood manifolds and stuff like that. So that was almost too much risk for Abdallah to throw away even potentially second. So keep it nice and patient. You have a few laps to do it, and you might just want to take a lap to get onto the back of Smith, hold there, and then on the next lap, go through. But as I say that, he's so close, so you just want to get the move done. Look how close he is through the second Lesbo.
Oh, surely this is going to be easy as pie now. Abdallah's going to have Smith in the slipstream. He's going to be a lot closer than he was on the previous lap. But again, Smith is going to go long on the brakes. Abdallah can't risk it. This is brilliant from Smith. So careful on the strategy. Abdallah has everything to lose here. Smith has everything to gain. But essentially what Abdallah needs to do here is hustle Smith into making the mistake. That's how he's going to get this move sorted out. But Smith is absolutely bolted to the racing line. He even brings the car a couple of inches over the racing line just to keep Abdallah at bay a little while longer. And this is where the back end of the car starts to get slidey. But he needs to be close. He is much closer this time. Surely he's going to beat him to the braking zone before they even have to worry about the downshift. Here we go. Smith will protect the inside line. but Abdallah's already got him. Oh, Smith is still long into the brakes. And yet again, Smith hops over the curbs. Outl can't get him. This is a wonderful fight.
Smith is so confident into that T1 braking zone that despite Abdallah's advantage in momentum, Smith has a later and longer braking, and he goes defensive again, forces Outl to the outside. However, Outl has such a pace advantage, Smith again under braking is gonna hold it.
This is magic. This is what esports should be about. Terrific stuff between these two. Fighting for the win in the Purist category. De Bruyn already has the Pro pretty much done and dusted. But Smith versus Outl for the win in Purist. This is so hard to call. The faster car is definitely Outl, but the most confident on the brakes is Smith. Now Outl is going to pull ahead. He will get into the lead here, but can Smith outbrake him again? This time Outl swaps position, moves to the middle of the road, and I think that's done and dusted. Outl really had to work Smith hard for that. But that just goes to show how good these two racers are. Eventually, Outl playing Smith at his own game, moving the car to the middle of the road. So even though Smith is stronger on the brakes, Outl is going to be stronger in a straight line. Job done. Ahmed Outl now 3 laps away from the win.
That was fantastic. And yeah, you're right. As soon as he had the car cleared, potentially crew chief saying clear left, and then he just takes the middle immediately to prevent Smith from chucking it back down the inside. That was fantastic. That was a 3-4 lap close battle. That was awesome for the lead in Purist. And Outl, if he keeps it clean, we know he potentially has the faster car of these two. So he might have just sealed it, as Eric Moyne, I think, had a little bit of a moment there off the side. And that's second in AM. Lane, by the way, has maintained the AM lead.
And he managed to do that even through the pit stops. So that's nice and sorted for Lane. But yeah, Outl now starting to check into a bit of a rhythm now. Oh, and Gilles Lalonde has ended up with a penalty. He is down in 8th position in the pro category anyway. Here is Vermeulen and, this is Chen and Venter battling away for position. Venter trying to go the long way on Jerry Chen. And that will do nicely. Just corrects the twitch on the way through the first apex. But it's even more loose through the second. These cars are so top heavy. You've got to be really careful on the throttle. How much acceleration on the throttle you carry through the curbs, because that really will spit the car out. The transference of weight in these fast apexes really isn't something that the Group C is built to cope with. They're great in a straight line. You've got to be so delicate through these fast sweeping turns. And that's well tidied up there for Venter. Chen, not a lot really he can do in response. But as you can see, as we go into the penultimate lap now, De Bruyn, Outl and Lane are on course for class victory after a stunning race here at Monza. Really has lived up to the expectations, and we knew that this place was going to give us some great action, and it certainly has.
Yeah, and Outl ends up setting the best time in the Purist class as a result of this, so absolutely trying to pull away from Smith, leave nothing to doubt. Venter isn't completely safe from Chen if traffic has something to say about it, but I think we've pretty much spaced out. As Moyne recovering has gone ahead of our P3 and Pro Esquinas, so these guys are for position overall, but of course cross-class.
So that'll be a nice tidy little finish there for Esquinas if he can get through and make the move there on Moyne. I don't think Moyne's going to put up much of a fight. He certainly doesn't have to. He's obviously focusing on the AM podium. So Esquinas gets through, nice and tidy. Might get something on the switcheroo. Meanwhile, DiMarzo is having a pretty tidy fight here as he battles away with Chen once again. This is for overall position, of course. Venter, Chen and DiMarzo still very much within touching distance of each other. But DiMarzo trying to hunt down Chen up to the braking zone for the Parabolica. He may decide to throw one up the inside, as meanwhile just in front of them there's already a little bit of a scrap there for Venter. But Chen is falling into the clutches of DiMarzo. DiMarzo really on it as Wouter De Bruyn goes into the final lap. DiMarzo is going to try and get alongside Jerry Chen down the main straight. He decides to hang back, but he'll have the slipstream, he'll have the tow. He should be able to get a move into Variante Goodyear, depending on where he places the car. He's got to think about this. Now he bails out. He bails out on the throttle, and that's probably the sensible decision because he can probably pick up Chen later on in the lap. But this man is going for a move of two of his own now. Meyer is catching up to Vermeulen, and this is for 13th overall. And let's not forget that Meyer is looking at 5th in Purist. So he's done a very fair job over the course of the race. However, this is your race leader, Wouter De Bruyn, Flawless is an overused word in motorsport. You can't really think of a better one for Wouter de Bruin.
It was absolutely fantastic. So dominant. The only one to break into the 29s. Did it in qualifying. Just so fast, so confident with that Porsche. And even had the gap to take an extra set of tires. Whether he planned on it or not, he used it. And, I mean, yeah, absolutely flawless performance from de Bruin. Led flag to flag, grand slammed it. Well done.
Final corner, he gets a little bit of opposite lock as he jats out of the final turn, but what a performance in the VWSC historic 1991. Wouter de Bruin comes through for an emphatic victory at Monza. Perfection is so hard to achieve at this level, but that is Wouter de Bruin's perfect race here at Monza. He will come through for the victory in fine style. Ahmed Abdallah is going to get second overall. Here he comes, and with it, he will take the victory in the Purist category. What a comeback drive from Ahmed Abdallah. He started the race with a penalty, had to charge forward, but it's not going to hold him back. Abdallah victorious at Monza after a great final few laps battle there with Smith in the Peugeot. Excellent racing. Really was extraordinary to see them at work. And Lane has already come through, I believe, for the victory in the AM category. So an excellent performance there from Lane. He can celebrate the moment in style.
That was such a good ending to that race. The Purist battle absolutely kicked off. De Bruin's dominant win over Whitehead as well. So De Bruin third in the championship and Whitehead second in the championship. Marouane El Idrissi, another no-show for him. So our pro championship is absolutely gonna close right up between De Bruin and Whitehead, and we'll have to see if El Idrissi comes back to defend his. He opened the season with 2 wins, and then he's left the door open by not showing up. So that's given Whitehead the win at Suzuka, of course that massive battle with Ben Borman, and now it's given De Bruin the win in Monza. So the 3 of them are looking good for a good championship battle in pro. And with Borman's technical difficulties and being a no-show on this race, not by his own accord by any means, it's given Abdallah the win with Smith coming home second, so still a good run for the Peugeots. And yeah, that championship as well with Abdallah's continual strong performances is going to get very interesting as well.
And fair play to Suvic, a good podium finish for him in the Purist category. He'll be happy with that in front of Stoll and Angelidis. Lane taking the victory in front of Moyne and a podium for Bullion. He can be quite pleased with that, to be fair. It's not easy up against this field when you've got the likes of DeMarzo and Mountjoy and Nielsen Vestergaard and Miller and Rice, who have a little bit more experience this season than Bullion does. Bullion hasn't done the whole season. So for him to come through for third position, he can be very pleasantly surprised and happy with that performance. That is it, and all done and dusted. It's a victory then in the Purists category for Ahmed Abdallah in front of Ross Smith and Timon Suvic from Manuel Stoll and George Angelidis. Peter Mayer in front of James Andrew, and the retirement in the Purist category was Steve Carman in the Lucky Strike Mazda. Ahmed Abdallah second overall, of course. In the pro category, the winner overall was Wouter de Bruin ahead of Jason Whitehead, both drivers on the same lap. Ludwig Askinis in third position in front of Brian Hall and Jacques Vermeulen. Paul J. Venter in P6 after that great scrap with Jerry Chen. And then Gilles Lalonde coming home in 8th place in front of Oscar Dancourt. Sadly, the Dark Thunder Jaguar of Matthew Overton unable to complete the full race distance in front of Pedro Cruz Gomez and Mark Jones in the Flying Kiwi Porsche, who suffered exactly the same fate. Then we go into the AM category, and what a performance it was for Tom Lane in the Manta Squid Porsche. He comes through in front of Eric Moyne and Neil Bullion, who were in the same racing lap. Barry DeMarzo in 4th place in the Lucky Strike Mazda from Adrian Rice and Tom Mountjoy. And then Stephen Miller coming through ahead of Brad Nielsen Vestergaard in the McDonald's car. Sadly, we lost John Mayer after a very tough battle for him, and Guy Sever out of the race as well. We didn't actually see what happened to John Mayer, but he joined the likes of Sever, Roland Hagenars, Leon Ganari, and Tom Nazella in the Coastal Coots machine. So a very tough race battle then at Monza. We always knew it was going to be, but the man on top is Wouter de Bruin. And he is in the waiting room of the broadcast booth, so we will bring him in and have a word with the dominant force at Monza, Wouter de Bruin. Absolutely fantastic. Winner in pro, winner overall. You looked pretty flawless out there. It looked like you really didn't put a wheel wrong, but just tell us what it was like holding that Porsche 962C around Monza.
Yeah, it was fun. It's I finally got a good load down for setup here, and it felt good to drive. And yeah, it was quite unexpected that I had the pace over the rest of the field. So it was enjoyable to stay out up front. Of course, it was still a bit of a challenge with the lapped traffic. And Ahmed didn't make it too easy for me in the first half of the race. But yeah, it was great to for once have a dominant race.
Now, what's really interesting about the victory this time, Wouter, of course, is that you've beaten one of your main rivals in the championship fight, Jason Whitehead. This tightens things up in terms of the title fight. How significant is this now in terms of your resolve, your oneness, I suppose, with the Porsche? Just how significant is this opportunity for you now to gain that gap?
Yeah, well, we've seen that the car is good at some tracks and less at others. There was a BOP done recently, so that was in my favor for this round. But also, I think this track fits the car better than Suzuka, for example. So yeah, it feels like this is indeed the start of my World Championship challenge. But we'll see how it will behave at the cars, at the tracks that are coming up.
You've certainly convinced us that it's a good championship attack so far. Troy, anything to say for Wouter de Bruin?
You know, I'm still coming back. I'm still a little rusty, but I was able to hit like the 34s, you know, at Tuesday's race. The fact that you got into 29s, I'd say, yeah, you got a good set. You got a good driver, and the pair together on the Porsche is made for a pretty dominant well. So, yeah, tire-wise, were you planning to always take an extra set of tires, or was it just because you had the big gap that you decided to take the tires?
Yeah, just first on that lap time in qualifying, I just trimmed it completely down, and I thought, okay, let's go for it. And I think it was the most fun qualifying I had. There was still a threat of rain, and I knew Brent Borman was not able to set time due to some connection issues, so he was still a challenge. So I felt, okay, I keep pushing, and it just kept going quicker and quicker. So yeah, that was fun in itself. And yeah, for the race, I decided to change tires at one of the stops. And then you could do both the first or the second stop. I think Ahmed changed tires on the second stop. I did on the first. So before the stop, I pushed a bit harder to open up the gap. And that just helped me to stay out ahead of the first pit stops. And then during the second rounds, the gap increased as he changed tires.
Yeah, fantastic.
Absolutely brilliant stuff, and it was really enjoyable for us to watch at home as well, Wouter. Thank you very much indeed. A great performance and a great victory. Enjoy the moment.
Thanks, guys.
Well, it's definitely been very thrilling here at Monza, and we've had a fantastic battle. We have obviously got some big races coming up in the season, Troy. These are the ones we're all looking forward to. The rest of May is going to be in preparation for the 2.4 hours of Le Mans on the 1991 championship. That comes up 2 weeks from now, of course. But we also get to savor in the glory of the end of June, because we have the VWSC Hypercar Championship coming back up with the 4.8 hours of Le Mans. That's the big one. And then, of course, we have the 1 hour of Watkins Glen. So much to look forward to coming up.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And that 4.8 hours is going to be pretty taxing for everybody involved. So that's going to be a dual driver event. So we'll have, you know, about half the cars on track, and each car on track will, of course, have two drivers throughout the course of the race. So that will be very interesting, because the drivers will share points. So who you're, you know, obviously on the teams are going to go together and get dual driving duties, as well as the fact that it's almost double points on Le Mans. So getting a good run there, you know, for the likes of De Bruin or Uyan or whoever, you know, having their championship runs, and they're in that top battle with, you know, Borman, Smith, and, you know, across both races. This is the one you really need to do well at. And we were talking with Jamie Zalecki at the end of the last race, trying to get a championship charge on the GT AMS. That 4.8 hours is where that championship charge needs to happen. And that's where people who are currently leading the championship, if they win at Le Mans, holy cow, it's going to be hard to topple them the rest of the season. We're approaching halfway in the season, but Le Mans is where all the points are on offer. So
certainly is. We're really looking forward to that. Thanks again, Troy. Thanks for holding the fort until I could make it. I'm going to try and make sure I'm there for the entirety of the 2.4 hours next time in 2 weeks' time. I'll make sure I'm there, especially considering that it's on the Circuit de la South. We're going to have an amazing 2.4 hours of Le Mans there. It's going to be very exciting. The battle will continue in the title fight, and we're going to have a very, very good show to bring you as the season progresses. From everybody at Champions Motorsport, it's going to be a fantastic one. Thanks again to Storm Gang for all the hard work they do to bring this quality broadcast to you, and of course to Troy Uyan on the cameras and comms. We've had some fantastic battles at Monza. 2 weeks from now, we'll do it all again on the legendary Circuit de la Sarthe at Le Mans in France for 2.4 hours. From myself, Jake Sanson, from Troy Uyan and the whole team, good night. See you for the next one.